Hi, this is Dr. Sandy Queen with Queen Homeschool Supplies at queenhomeschool.com, and today I'm going to take you on a flip through of our History Stories for Little Americans, which is one of the volumes for history for younger children, preschool through early elementary, in our Discovering History series. So let me show you how this series is set up. We're going to go page by page, and you're going to see an introduction letter to the parent, followed by a page of how to use this course. And this level course is set up differently than the ones for older children in this series, which I'll explain in a different video. But basically, you've got a 5-day setup. Day 1 is always going to start with vocabulary. And since this volume is for young children, there's going to only be one vocabulary word. It's already defined for the child, as you'll see. And then also, as you'll see, there's a picture that shows what it means. Now, this particular vocabulary word for this week is taken from the story that you're going to read the following day. So every Tuesday, there's a chapter of the story, and that introduces the history lesson. And these are obviously at this level, this will be a read aloud. The next day is spent with the child drawing something that was brought out in the story for that week. The following day is something for them to color that was in the story for that week. And then on Friday, we have a timeline that they are going to add to. In the very back of all of the Discovering History books, you will find the instructions. I'll get to that when we get to that part on how to put together the timeline. Okay, the next Monday, we start with a new vocabulary word, which is taken out of this week's story. Again, for this age range, it's already defined, and there's a picture that shows the definition. For older kids, there would be a list of vocabulary words that they would have to look up and find the definitions for, and no pictures. Sorry, they can draw their own if they really want a picture. The next day, they have the chapter of the story that they're going to read together with you. The next day, there is something to draw from that week's story, then something to color the following day, and again, the timeline. So every week is set up the same. There's the next Monday, vocabulary. Tuesday is the story. Wednesday, something to draw. Thursday, something to color. And Friday, the timeline of events. And this is showing the new thing that we're putting on the timeline next to something that we've already put on the timeline. In the very back of the volume, here's the next week. In the very back of the volume, you will see a timeline of all the events that are on the timeline in order, so that it's very simple to see exactly where everything goes. And of course, like all of our books, they are copyrighted, so you're not allowed to photocopy the books for multiple children, but we do give permission to photocopy the pages for the timeline figurines if you do not want to have to cut them out of your book. So this is the only page in these books that can be photocopied. You can photocopy this figure and cut it out and glue it on, rather than just cutting it out of your book if you prefer to do it that way. But everything else, each child would need a new book. Following week, Tuesday's the story. Wednesday, something to draw. Thursday, coloring something related to the story. And Friday, the timeline. So the whole book is set up in that same general format. Vocabulary, Monday, Tuesday's the story, Wednesday's the drawing, Thursday's coloring, Friday is the timeline. And you'll see, again, this is something added. It happened at the same time as something we've already added. So it's showing you what was already added while adding something new each week. Okay, so this particular volume, History Stories for Little Americans, covers early American history, and you'll see a wide range of events and stories and people and things pertaining to that time period. It's the timeline that's going to bring them all together. And sometimes people will ask a question like, well, what if I want to study this time period with different ages? And you certainly can do that. Now, today we're adding 3 events to the timeline, as you'll see. Okay, but you can study the same time period for different ages. They would just need different books that are different levels. And this particular time period is also covered for older kids in this particular volume in this series, Land That I Love covers up through early American history, up through the Revolutionary War, which is the same time period that this one covers for younger children. So you can have different kids using those particular 2 volumes. This one is for elementary through junior high, approximately, even maybe lower high school levels. But you don't have to. As you can see, these books are very easy to use, particularly for the child who is reading independently. When they get into the upper levels, like Land That I Love and the other ones that go above that, you will see they are set up to be used independently. So I have 6 children. Of course, they've all graduated now. I've got grandchildren. So when my kids were all using different levels, rather than us being all over the place, the older ones all worked independently. And by older, I mean from about 2nd or 3rd grade up. My youngest was diagnosed with cancer when he was 3. And so I wrote these books in a way that my older 5 kids could use them independently, because many times they had to while I was gone for weeks at a time in the hospital with my youngest. And so as long as they are reading independently, they can do their work independently. And in that way, you really don't have to be all over the place. They're just studying different time periods independently. But one thing that we have done, which we really enjoyed, and it did bring everyone together, even at the times where we were all studying different things at the same time, different time periods, was that we always did the timelines together, and not necessarily putting the figures on together, but we kept them all. We do our timeline, as you'll see in the very back of each volume. It tells you how we put the timeline together, and how we do it is to keep a binder with clear plastic sleeve protectors, white sheet of paper, draw a line across it, and you put the lines down and glue the figurines on there. So with us keeping one timeline and one binder, even though my kids were all studying different time periods, we were kind of all on the same page in that way, where we can see all the different timeline events and people that each other were studying, and we could see also how they overlapped, how they came into play either before or after someone else's that they were studying. And that was a really nice way to be able to integrate all the different levels that all 6 of my kids were doing with all different time periods, all in the same timeline volume. So as you can see, the book continues through vocabulary on Monday, story on Tuesday, drawing on Wednesday, coloring on Thursday, and the timeline on Friday. And you're going to see that all the way through. Okay, so very much the same format, just different events, different people, different vocabulary. And the vocabulary, again, is all taken, the words for the vocabulary each week are taken from the story that you're going to read the following day. So you're learning this word on Monday, that word's going to be used in a story on Tuesday, and that gives you more understanding of what you're going to be learning about, or what you are learning about, as you will already know what some of those words in the story will mean, because you had it for vocabulary on Monday. Okay, so still going through in that same format. I want to get to the very back of the book here, so I'm going to flip ahead. It's a long flip through because we've got a whole year's worth here. But at the end of each book, and here we are on lesson 36. Okay. So here we have the final timeline event. And back here we see the instructions for the timeline. And this is telling you how to put the timeline together in a binder. Clear plastic sleeve protectors, white sheet of paper, draw a line across. I mean, it's very simplified so that you can see exactly what we're doing. And this is what I call the cheat sheet of events. All the events on the timeline in order. Here's page 2 of that. Okay. And then in the back here, it tells you recommended additional resources from our Living History Reader series at queenhomeschool.com if you choose to add those. Those are all just additional living books about history. And that is it. So that is our volume History Stories for Little Americans in the Discovering History series at queenhomeschool.com. Thanks for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe to see more of our flip through videos.